What's up, everybody? I'm David Hain. Welcome to episode 83 of the A to D from Addict to Disciple podcast. If you enjoy these podcasts, please share the link with your friends. I'd like to give a big shout out today to our new listeners from Norway. That brings our total to 51 countries. Wow, thanks a lot, everybody. If you'd like to support our work with people caught in the snare of addiction, homelessness, or incarceration anywhere around the world, click on the support link in this episode's description. Your donation of any amount could change a life. When we come back, we'll get into this episode entitled, Lost Your Foundation? Welcome back to episode 83 of the A to D from Addict to Disciple podcast entitled, Lost Your Foundation? Today's episode will be another group session, and I want to give a big welcome to my friends in recovery from the U.S., South Africa, and Australia for their participation in this group. As before, I'll be keeping them anonymous, but I'll be saying their answers as if we were having a live group meeting. So guys, here's your next question. Once you lose your foundation, what are you standing on? Who or what died in your life that was your foundation, which resulted in you falling? Ben, would you like to start us out today? Sure, David. This is a very thought-provoking question. When I look back to how my addiction started in the first place, I think the foundation I laid was my sense of self-importance. Arrogance, I guess you could call it. Thinking I was hot shit, and then other people feeding that ego through experiences like being in a rock band as a lead singer and stuff like that. It compounded year after year and got worse and worse. I was still a kind person to people. I didn't treat people bad, but not at least as I can remember. But my arrogance was definitely super pungent. The foundation of self-importance and thinking the world revolved around me began to erode deeper and deeper, all the more as I went into addiction. It went from me being the life of the party, snorting a little cocaine and drinking, to eventually wanting to just be in a hotel room by myself with enough light to see the vein in my arm so that the needle could go in. Eventually, the bottom fell out, and I had no identity whatsoever, no foundation whatsoever. As they call it, I was tore up from the floor up, moving from situation to situation, just trying to find a place to sleep in the streets, hoping that I didn't look bad enough that I'd still be able to run in somewhere, quietly steal something, and go to the pawn shop to pawn it and get more money for more drugs. Don't get me wrong, I had parents and a support system, but in order to have them in my corner, I had to pursue sobriety, and I just wasn't ready to let go of that. And the drugs, quite frankly, had become my personality. So I really didn't know who I was, and anything that I thought I was drowned in the ocean as I tried to keep my head above water. It's sort of like rapper Eminem said, I hit rock bottom so hard, I bounced twice. Well, in my case, I think I may have bounced 3 or 4 times. I know it sounds cliche to say that Jesus was the rock at the bottom, but for me, it's true. The foundation of the seeds that my parents had sowed growing up had laid a good foundation for me to land on. The Word of God seemed to have a different life to me than it seems to have for some people that are new to the faith. I think it was because I heard it so much growing up. So, in light of that, as I'm talking through this, David, I realized that my foundation was always the Word of God. But I went and tried to build something, not realizing it was on sand that I was building. It only took a couple of strong storms, and I was flat on my back. I'm grateful to be building on the rock now. Wow, Ben, what a great way to start us out. Harry, I think you had shared in earlier episodes that your foundation is similar, so what would you like to add? Well, David, I agree. Thankfully, my foundation has been God. You see, I had some awesome pastors who taught me that the only foundation I needed was God and His Word. They taught me how to pray when things got rough and never turn my back on Jesus. Sadly, both of those great men have passed on, which left me to fend on my own. And what I did was build a stronger bond with the Lord. I had my fair share of bad days, but I got through them by the grace of God, by prayer, and by reading the Bible. I've learned the hard way that once you lose your foundation, you will end up standing on sin. And once you continue to sin, you'll be closer to death. Shaw, Harry. Yeah, that's deep. We're really seeing a pattern here with the strength of faith as the foundation we need. How about you, Adam? David, personally, when I lose my foundation, I'm left standing on a pillar of myself over the worst possible place that I could be. I feel like there's lava all around me, boiling lava, and if I fall, I'm done. There are no second chances. You see, in my addiction, I lost God, and that's why I fell. I tried to build a foundation on this boiling lava, and that failed. So I can tell all of you guys in the group, that's why I rely on God as my foundation now. Wow, I like that picture, Adam, that we try to build on boiling lava. So whether it's sand or boiling lava, it's not a pretty picture. Charlie, how about you? David, once I lose the foundation that my current recovery is built on, I find myself resting on my own laurels. I'm mastered quickly by things of the world like sin, greed, lust, money, power, anger, sex, and pleasure. Like all that comes out of me. And it's a bad place for me because I can never get enough of that stuff to make me feel okay. In my life, the sense of security died at a young age due to trauma after trauma. And I never felt safe. Then as time went on, there was no consistent place of residence to call home, no regular caretaker. I had no sense of security and really no sense of love. I was left to feel at a young age like I was on my own and that I was in charge most of the time. When it became time to start my own family, I didn't have the support or the wisdom to handle what life was throwing at me. It was like my body was an adult, but inside I was still that small child looking for love, security, and guidance. And this was the time when I was supposed to provide love, guidance, and security to my new family. Man, I struggled through and I was hurting all the time. So I turned to alcohol and drugs. And when the people I loved started to pass away around me, I lost it completely. I had no faith. And I remember that when my mom passed away, my drug use and alcoholism soared to unbelievable heights of insanity. It was some crazy times. And I thank God that I found foundation in recovery, filled with hope, faith, love, and the salvation in Jesus. I pray today that God will always be my master and my foundation for the rest of my days. Wow. Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Charlie. Dante, what would you like to add today? David, when I found my way into sexual sin, the foundation that I essentially lost was the joint parental stability in my home. You see, my parents got divorced when I was just a young kid. And looking back on it now, I can see that shook me. And I essentially had no foundation in Christ, so I turned to pornography at the time. It was something that I had no idea would have such a grip on me for so long. And it took a while till I got that foundation of faith. And I'm glad I did. Eddie, how do you relate to this? Well, David, I was brought up by my grandmother. And the greatest gift she gave me was that she taught me how to pray. You see, guys, she was a devout Catholic. So whenever we faced a crisis, we would all be called to the room to get down on our knees and pray the rosary. But Gran passed on while I was still young, and she was the rock of the family. Holidays were never the same after Gran passed. Our home was taken away. But one thing that stayed was how she taught us to pray, intense and with faith. I lost all that in the years to follow. I latched fully onto the world and all its pleasure it offered. But by grace and the right time in my life, I remembered all that she had instilled in me and decided to give my addictions to God. And he was only too glad to take me back into his loving arms. And I just want to say thank you, Gran. You couldn't give me everything, yet you gave me my faith and Jesus. Wow, that's really a strong and powerful memory, and I can see the strength that you're still getting from that foundation. Gary, how do you compare your situation to these guys? David, I believe that the foundation of my existence was my wife, the life we had, and our relationship. That relationship essentially was fulfilling and rewarding and became my subsequent fall when she suddenly passed away. The pain of profound loss was too much to bear, so I proverbially soaked my tortured thoughts in whiskey. However, the sense of devastation that I experienced had its roots years back in my childhood, and this is what I've been learning as I go through the From Ashes to Destiny curriculum. It's highlighted things and taken me back to my root wounds. And I fell hard and almost died. I'm not kidding. When my wife died, alcohol almost killed me. But I'm off alcohol for almost 13 months now, and I am recovering. More than that, I'm growing and progressing as a person by the grace of God. And he's given me freedom from addiction and a purpose going forward. A portion of that freedom comes from having explored and dealt with these deep-seated, long-held issues and wounds that limited my prospects for a good life. I feel that I have a genuine second chance at life, one of faith. I'm excited about my new foundation and what lies ahead. Wow. Thanks for sharing that, Gary. Ike, would you like to close us today? Sure, David, I'd be honored. For me, a good foundation is so important in a person's life. Your foundation is your everything. It's your image. It's the way people see you, the way you present yourself. It's the life you live. Everything tracks back to your foundation. And once you've lost your foundation, you've practically lost yourself. For me, I started becoming a person I never thought I could become. I was so confused, lost, and desperate to gain some sort of foundation that I could stand on. But my confusion led me down very ugly roads of addiction, to places that no one ever needed to go walking in the first place. You see, my habit was the death within me. I was my own worst enemy. I was so focused on my next high, and as a result, I was destroying every bit of good around me. This resulted in me falling so fast that it seemed like I never would stop falling. Wow. Thanks for sharing that, Ike. That's a good way to just wrap up what everyone shared. I hope our listeners have really gained something that they can begin to build their foundation on and strengthen their foundation in faith. Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening to this episode of the A to D from Addict to Disciple podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's words from our group. If you would like to join an online group or find one-on-one counseling to help change your situation and to build your foundation stronger, please message me on the link in this podcast or by email at davidfromatod@gmail.com or go to my website www.fromatod.org and click on the contact page. Tune in Monday for our next episode, and as always, stay safe and stay strong.